I still remember the sound of that knock. It was casual, innocent even, just 3 sharp taps on our front door, like any other teenage boy would do when coming over to hang out. But that knock changed everything. It was the beginning of something I never expected, something I never asked for, and yet something I couldn't stop once it started. It was early July, the kind of sticky, humid summer that clings to your skin. My son, Nathan, had just finished his first year of college and was back home for a few months. He was 20, all grown up now, at least he thought he was. Taller than me, lean and tan from all the soccer practices, but still that same wide-eyed kid at heart. We were getting along better than we had in years. That day, I'd taken the afternoon off. I worked in property management, flexible hours, which meant sometimes too much time in an empty house. I was making lemonade when Nathan called out from upstairs. "Dad, Zayden's almost here." I paused, confused. "Zayden?" "Yeah," he yelled back. "My best friend from campus. I told you he might crash for a few days." I didn't remember, or maybe I hadn't been listening. Before I could respond, there was a knock. 3 quick taps. When I opened the door, I swear my breath caught for a second. There he was, Zayden. He had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, headphones around his neck, and a smile that could have lit up the whole block. He looked about Nathan's age, maybe a year older, with sharp features, tousle curls, and the kind of effortless confidence you only get in your early 20s. "Hi, Mr. Brooks," he said. "Thanks for letting me stay here." His voice was smooth, respectful, low, not flirty. Not anything inappropriate. So why did my chest tighten like that? "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Come on in." The first few hours were normal. Zayden was polite. He complimented the house, asked about our town, even offered to help make dinner. They ate pasta, laughed about inside jokes I didn't understand, played video games late into the night. I watched them from the hallway for a minute, wondering how time had moved so fast. My son was no longer a boy, and his world was no longer just mine. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep, because Zayden's laugh kept echoing in my head, and the way his eyes met mine when I handed him a plate, like he was seeing through something I didn't even realize I was wearing. A mask, maybe, one I'd worn for decades. The next morning, I woke to find Zayden alone in the kitchen, shirtless, just him making coffee, casually scrolling through his phone at the counter like he'd lived here his whole life. His back was to me at first. Muscular, defined, not in a gym showy way, just real. Natural. I should have turned around. I didn't. He looked over his shoulder. "Morning, Mr. Brooks. Coffee?" I cleared my throat. "Sure." As he handed me the mug, our fingers brushed. Nothing happened, but it felt like something did. "Thanks," I said quietly. He smiled. "You always this quiet in the mornings?" "Just not used to having guests." "You're not bothering me." He took a sip. "Actually, this place feels kind of peaceful. Like safe." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. Nathan came in moments later, yawning, unaware of the odd silence between us. But Zayden noticed, and when he glanced at me again over the rim of his mug, I felt a pull. Subtle, dangerous, unspoken. Over the next few days, things stayed innocent. Technically, but it was like we were circling something, orbiting it, both of us pretending we didn't feel it. I catch Zayden looking at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Once, while we were all watching a movie, he stretched out on the couch beside me and let his hand rest just a little too close. Close enough for me to feel the heat. Not close enough to call it out. Nathan never noticed. He trusted both of us. That made it worse. And better. And more unbearable all at once. I started avoiding Zayden. I'd leave early for work. Stay late at the office. I even lied one night and said I had a meeting just to avoid dinner. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. His voice. His presence. The way he made me feel seen, like I wasn't just Nathan's dad, but a man who hadn't felt wanted in years. Then came that night, the night that blurred the line completely. Nathan had gone to a friend's party and said he might crash there. I was alone in the house. At least, I thought I was I just finished a shower when I walked into the hallway, towel around my waist, and nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw Zayden standing at the top of the stairs. He looked as shocked as I was. "Sorry," he said, eyes flicking downward, then quickly away. "Didn't mean to, It's fine," I said quickly, adjusting the towel. "I didn't know you were still here." "Yeah, I didn't feel like going out. Figured I'd just chill." We both stood there. Neither of us moved. The silence between us stretched long enough to feel like a decision. And then he said it, out loud. "Do you feel it too?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because my silence said everything. Like if you felt that emotional tension. Comment your thoughts. We read every one. Subscribe a full 11-part journey. Trust us, it only gets deeper. Stay tuned for part 2, and thank you for watching. I should have walked away. I should have said something mature, something responsible. Anything to stop what was slowly beginning to spiral between me and my son's best friend. But I didn't. I just stood there, dripping, barely covered in a towel, facing Zayden in the hallway like time had paused. His question still hung in the air. "Do you feel it too?" Yes, I did. But saying out loud felt like stepping into a world I wasn't sure I could come back from. And yet, the silence between us said more than words ever could. Zayden didn't press. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, watching me, his eyes full of a question that neither of us could really ask, not without tearing something open. "I'm going to head to bed," he said quietly. "Night, Mr. Brooks." Then he turned, walked down the hallway, and closed his bedroom door behind him. And I just stood there, towel damp, heart pounding, wondering what the hell was happening to me. The next morning was a blur. Nathan was back. He seemed hungover but happy, laughing about the party he'd gone to, raiding the fridge for leftover pizza. Zayden was quiet, polite as always. No eye contact, no lingering looks. It was like nothing had happened, but it had. And now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just a moment at the top of the stairs, but all of it. The late-night talks, the quiet glances, the feeling I got in my chest every time he smiled. I was 45. He was barely 21. He was my son's friend. But when something stirs that deep, that unexpectedly, it doesn't ask your permission. That evening, I stayed in my room, hoping the feelings would pass like a bad storm. But the guilt only made things worse. I hadn't done anything wrong, technically, but it felt like I had. And deep down, I knew it wasn't over, because I didn't want it to be. That night, just past midnight, I got up for a glass of water. The hallway was dark, quiet. As I passed the guest room, I heard music playing softly, not loud enough to disturb Nathan, but just loud enough to notice. I don't know what made me pause. Curiosity? Temptation? Something else I didn't want to name? I knocked once, softly. "Zayden?" There was a long pause. Then, "Yeah? You all right?" "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." "Same." Another pause. Then, "Want to come in?" I did, and that terrified me. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of his laptop screen. He was lying on the bed, shirtless again, blanket pulled halfway over him. He sat up when I entered, adjusting the blanket as if to be modest. But the way he looked at me wasn't modest at all. It was knowing, gentle, intense. I sat on the edge of bed, unsure what to say. "I don't want to mess anything up," he said quietly. "With Nathan, or with you. I know this is weird." "It is," I said, "but it's not just you. I feel it too." There it was, said out loud. No taking it back. He nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "So, what do we do?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of being rejected, but fear of being something wrong, something shameful. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we don't cross the line. Not while you're here. Not while Nathan's under this roof." He nodded again, but we both knew the line had already blurred. Days passed. We kept our distance physically, but emotionally, we were falling deeper into something we didn't understand. Zayden started spending more time outside. Sometimes he'd help me with yard work or ask to tag along to the store. Nathan didn't notice. He trusted us. Zayden and I never touched. But every word, every look felt electric. One afternoon, we sat on the porch while Nathan was out with friends. It was humid again. A storm threatened in the distance. "Can I ask you something?" Zayden said. "Sure. Have you ever felt this before? For another guy?" I took a breath. "Not like this." He nodded. "Me neither. Not really. I mean, I thought maybe once. But this is different." I looked at him. "Why do you think that is?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I see you. Like, really see you. And I think you see me too." He was right. And that scared the hell out of me. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. The air felt thick, like something was about to break. And part of me wanted it to. But just before dawn, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, barely there. Then a knock at my door. Soft, familiar. I sat up, heart racing. Another knock. And then a whisper. "It's me, Zayden." Like, if you feel the emotional build. Comment what you think will happen next. Subscribe to follow this forbidden journey till the very end. Part 3 is next, and it's where things begin to shift. The knock was soft, barely audible, like he wasn't sure if he wanted me to hear it or not. But I did. I sat up slowly in the dark, heart pounding. The digital clock on my nightstand glowed red, 4:13 a.m. Everything was quiet, the kind of stillness that usually meant safety, except it didn't feel safe. Not now. "It's me," came the whisper again. Zayden's voice, careful, low, gentle. My throat was dry. I didn't move at first. I didn't say a word. But I got up. I crossed the room and opened the door just enough for a sliver of hallway light to spill in. He was standing there, barefoot, a white t-shirt, sweatpants, hands in his pockets, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Nerves, maybe, or something darker. Lonelier. "I couldn't sleep," he said. I swallowed. "Zayden, I know," he said. "I know we said we wouldn't." We stared at each other. There was so much space between us and none at all. I just needed, I don't know, someone. You. A million reasons to close the door spun through my head. All valid. All the right thing. But instead, I stepped back and let him in. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He stood there for a second, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands on my knees. My whole body was tense. Not because I was scared of him, but because I was scared of me. He sat beside me. Not too close. Not touching. But his presence was enough to shake the air in the room. For a while, we just sat like that, breathing in the silence, listening to the ceiling fan spin overhead. Then he whispered, "Do you ever feel like you've been pretending your whole life?" I turned to look at him. He wasn't facing me. His eyes were down, vulnerable, raw. "Yeah," I said quietly. "All the time." He nodded like that answer hurt and healed him all at once. When I was a kid, he said, I used to watch people, other guys, see the way they'd laugh, flirt, touch girls. I thought I was broken because I didn't feel what they felt. Not for girls, anyway. I didn't say anything. He continued. But then college happened, and I met people who were just open, free. And for the first time, I started wondering if maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I just hadn't found the right person yet. Now he looked at me. His voice was quiet. And then I came here. The silence between us grew louder than anything he'd said. He didn't reach for me. He didn't make a move. But his eyes were asking. And I didn't have an answer. Not one I could speak. So I did the only thing that felt honest. I reached out, slow, careful, and took his hand. Just held it. Nothing more. But that small contact cracked something inside both of us. We sat like that for a long time. No words. No pressure. Just two men sitting in the dark, finally letting themselves be seen. Eventually, his head rested lightly against my shoulder. I didn't move. I couldn't. It felt like something sacred. Like something we both waited too long to feel. He didn't stay the whole night. Maybe an hour. Maybe less. He slipped out of the room as quietly as he'd come in, and when the sun rose a few hours later, it was like nothing had ever happened, except it had, and we both knew it. The next few days, we barely spoke, not out of avoidance, but out of understanding. There was a silence between us now that wasn't awkward. It was heavy with meaning. He started spending more time out of the house. I started working longer hours again. Nathan, oblivious as ever, was talking about getting a job at the rec center for the rest of the summer. Zayden didn't say much about his plans. Until one evening, over dinner, he did. "I might head back to campus next week," he said casually. "Coach wants me to help with summer training." Nathan shrugged. "Cool. I'll probably still be around. We'll link up again before school starts." I didn't say anything, but inside, something cracked. Zayden glanced at me briefly, just enough to see if I'd react. I didn't, not in front of my son. But later that night, when I was out back alone watering the garden, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Zayden. I didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. I kept watering, avoiding his eyes. "You're not leaving yet," I said. "No," he agreed, "but I had to tell you something before I go." I turned to him then. He looked different. Not older, not colder, just more sure of himself. "I know we never said it," he said, "and maybe we never will, but you changed something in me. Something I didn't even know needed to be changed." I felt my throat tighten. "You showed me that connection doesn't always look how we expect, and that sometimes the people who understand us most aren't the ones we're supposed to fall for." I opened my mouth, but he stopped me. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "Not now. Maybe not ever. I just wanted you to know." And then he stepped forward and hugged me. A real hug, not filled with heat or tension, but something deeper. Respect, understanding, closure, or the opposite. I didn't know. He left 5 days later. Nathan drove him to the train station. I stayed behind. Didn't say goodbye. Couldn't. The house felt emptier after that. Nathan went on with his summer. I went on with my days. But something had shifted. Every room felt quieter. Every shadow carried his memory, his laugh, his quiet confidence. Weeks passed, then a month, then one afternoon, an envelope arrived. No return address, no handwriting, just a single sheet inside. A picture of us. Zayden had taken on the porch one night, when Nathan wasn't looking, a candid of me smiling with the sunset behind us. On the back, in small writing, were 3 words. "I still see you." I stared at the picture for a long time, longer than I probably should have. It wasn't the photo itself, although it was a good one, candid and soft, me looking off toward the sunset like I hadn't a care in the world. It was the words on the back that dug into me. "I still see you." Simple, direct, but full of weight. Zayden hadn't signed it. He didn't need to. I knew his handwriting. And more than that, I knew what he meant. He was gone, but he wasn't. Not really. The first week after Zayden left, I did everything I could to stay distracted. I deep cleaned the garage, reorganized the pantry, took on extra shifts at work. Anything to keep my mind off the quiet moments. But it didn't work. I'd still catch myself looking at the chair he used to sit in during dinner, or glancing out the window around 4 p.m., the time he usually came back from his afternoon runs. The worst was the smell. His cologne still lingered faintly in the guest room. I didn't even realize I was keeping the door closed just to preserve it. Nathan, thankfully, remained oblivious. He was busy with his own life. Friends, odd jobs, a part-time gig he'd picked up helping a neighbor with landscaping. We crossed paths, but he didn't notice how quiet I'd become. Or maybe he did, and just chalked it up to stress. I didn't have the courage to ask. A week later, I finally texted Zayden. Nothing heavy. Just, "Hope training's going well. House feels empty without you." He didn't respond right away. In fact, it was 2 days later when I got a reply. "It's going okay. I miss the quiet, and the garden, and you." That last part hit harder than I expected. We didn't talk much after that. A few check-ins, a meme or two, but we both knew the distance was intentional, necessary. except it didn't feel like closure. One evening, about 3 weeks after he left, I came home to find Nathan pacing the living room, phone in hand. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked up, clearly rattled. "Zayden's in the hospital." I froze. "What?" He fainted at practice. "They're running tests." Said it might be dehydration or overtraining or something, but Nathan shook his head. "He's alone, Dad." That hit me like a punch in the chest. He was alone, and I wasn't there. Nathan booked a late-night train. Said he'd stay with Zayden for a few days, make sure he was okay. I nodded along, pretending I wasn't dying inside with every detail. Tell him I said hi. I managed to say, but what I meant was, tell him I never stopped thinking about him. Tell him I still feel everything I felt. Tell him I'm sorry. Of course, I said none of that, because I was still a coward in all the ways that counted. The next few days were unbearable. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat much. I just kept replaying our last conversation, wondering if he knew, really knew, how much he meant to me. Nathan called on the second night. He's okay. Tired, but okay. Just needed rest. Doctor say he's good to go. That's a relief, I said and meant it. There was a pause. Then Nathan said something that made my heart stop. Zayden's been asking about you. I tried to keep my voice steady. Oh. Yeah. Said he misses your garden talks. Said he felt safe there. With you. I didn't respond. Couldn't. He really looks up to you, Dad. That broke me in a way I didn't expect. A week later, Zayden was released. Nathan stayed an extra day, then came home. Said Zayden needed rest, but would probably be back to himself soon. Still, something felt unfinished, like we left the door open and both pretended we hadn't. I debated texting again, but this time he beat me to it. When are you going to stop pretending? That was all the message said. No context, no punctuation, just that. And suddenly, all the defenses I'd built collapsed in an instant. That night, I replied, not with words, with a photo, the same one he'd sent me, the candid of me at sunset. Underneath it, I wrote, "Come home." He didn't text back. Not right away. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even that week. But I knew he saw it. You can tell, somehow, even without a read receipt, you feel it. Like your soul sends out a message and knows when the other person's heart heard it. So I waited, quietly, hopefully, terrified. And then, one morning nearly 2 weeks later, he showed up. I was in the kitchen mid-coffee, still in sweatpants and yesterday's shirt. When I heard a knock at the door, I opened it, expecting a package or maybe a neighbor. It was Zayden. He had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a look on his face I hadn't seen before, a mixture of exhaustion, courage, and something close to relief. "You said come home," he said, voice low. I stood there, mouth slightly open, and I didn't know if he meant it, he added. "But I needed to see you." I stepped back to let him in. He didn't move at first. I don't expect anything. I couldn't stop thinking about that night, about how I felt here, with you. His eyes softened. I've never had a place or a person feel like that. Still, I said nothing. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached forward, took the bag from his shoulder, and placed it inside the hallway. "Then stay," I said. Zayden didn't move back into the guest room right away. The first few nights, he crashed on the couch, said it felt safer that way, easier. But the space between us was shrinking every day. We didn't talk about the night he'd come to my room, or the hug in the garden, or the messages we'd shared in silence. But it lingered in everything, in the way we move around each other, the glances that lasted too long, the accidental brushes of hands. Nathan didn't suspect a thing. He was thrilled to have his best friend back. The two of them laughed like nothing had changed. And maybe nothing had. For them. But for me, everything had. One night, a week after Zayden returned, I found him outside, sitting on the porch steps, knees pulled to his chest, eyes scanning the stars. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. Too many thoughts. I sat beside him. "You ever feel like you're just waiting for permission?" he asked suddenly. I glanced at him. Permission to what? To live how you want, to love who you want, to stop being scared. The air between us tightened. I keep thinking about that room, he added, softer now. That night, not just because of what almost happened, but because of how it felt to just be seen. He turned to me then, and I don't want to go back to pretending. I looked away, heart racing. Zayden, you don't have to say it, he said quickly. I know it's complicated. I know who I am in your life, and who you are in mine, but I also know it's real, and I think you do too. I didn't answer, but I didn't have to, because when his hand brushed mine that night, I didn't pull away. Things didn't become physical. Not yet, but the emotional intimacy deepened. We started spending more time together alone. Coffee early in the morning before Nathan woke up. Short walks in the evening. Quiet glances across the dinner table that said more than words ever could. And the tension grew. Not unhealthy tension. Not forbidden lust. But something aching, tender, scary in its honesty. We never said what we were doing. We didn't need labels. We just were, whatever this was. It existed outside of logic or explanation. And we both were afraid to breathe too hard, afraid we'd break it. But life doesn't let things stay perfect for long. One night, Nathan came home early from a late-night movie with friends and found us in the kitchen. It wasn't a compromising position, but it was close. I was leaning against the counter, laughing. Zayden had his hand on my shoulder, smiling. It wasn't inappropriate, but it was intimate. Too intimate for what we were supposed to be. Nathan didn't say anything. He just froze, then quietly walked upstairs. Later that night, he knocked on my door. "Hey," he said, standing in the frame. "Can we talk?" Of course. He stepped in and closed the door behind him. "I saw you and Zayden earlier." I froze. He took a breath. "I don't want to assume anything, but I'm not dumb." I sat down slowly. "Nathan, I'm not mad," he interrupted. "I'm just confused." I looked up at him, surprised. I always thought Zayden was straight, but maybe he's not. Maybe I just never asked. And you're my dad, and I love you. But this, it's a lot. He wasn't angry. He was hurt. Maybe not by what he saw, but by what it meant. "I trusted both of you," he added. That's when I finally spoke. "We never meant to hurt you, Nathan. We still don't. And I didn't plan any of this. It just happened." "Are you in love with him?" he asked suddenly. The question hit like a truck. I didn't answer right away because I wasn't sure. Or maybe I was, and too scared to admit it. Nathan nodded slowly. That's all I needed to know. Then he left. The next morning was different. Quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Nathan didn't come down for breakfast. Zayden stayed in his room longer than usual. And I sat in the kitchen, coffee going cold, staring out the window like I could explain everything I didn't have words for. When Zayden finally came downstairs, I knew, just from the way he looked at me, that Nathan had spoken to him. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat across from me, fidgeting with a spoon, avoiding my eyes. I didn't want him to find out like that. He said eventually, "Neither did I." There was a long pause. "Was it a mistake?" he asked softly. I looked up. "No," I said. "It wasn't." Nathan left the house that afternoon. Didn't say where he was going. Didn't answer my texts. Hours passed. Sunset came and went. By the time it was dark, Zayden and I were pacing the living room like nervous parents waiting for a teenager to sneak back in. When the front door finally creaked open around midnight, Nathan stepped inside, tossed his keys in the bowl, and looked at us. He didn't look angry, just older, like this entire thing had aged him. "I stayed at Leo's," he said flatly. "Just needed time." We nodded. "You guys don't have to explain anything," he added. "I get it. Things happen. People change. But this," he pointed between us, "it messes with my head." I stood. "Nathan, it's not what you think." "Isn't it?" he shot back. "He's my best friend, Dad, like a brother. And you're my father. So whatever this is between you two, it's not just yours. It affects everyone." Zayden stepped forward. Nathan, I never meant. No. Nathan snapped, holding up a hand. Don't. Just don't. You should have told me. Both of you. I didn't argue. Because he was right. We'd been selfish. Careful in our own emotional orbit, never realizing how much it could pull others into the gravity well. Nathan exhaled sharply. I need space. And with that, he walked upstairs. Zayden and I sat in silence for a long time after. I should go, he said eventually. No, I said. Not yet. Why not? Because if you leave now, I said, everything breaks. And maybe it should. Maybe we deserve that. But I'm tired of running. He looked at me then. Really looked. You said that night in the garden you felt seen. I added. I felt that too. I still do. And I think deep down Nathan knows this isn't something cheap or fleeting. Zayden nodded slowly. But I also think, I continued, we have to give him time. And honesty, that's the only way forward. The days that followed were fragile. Like walking on cracked ice, never sure when the surface might give. Nathan barely spoke to either of us. Meals were quiet. The house, once filled with warmth and easy laughter, felt cold. Zayden started packing his things 3 days later. I didn't stop him, because even though I wanted him to stay more than anything, I knew this wasn't the time to fight for us. Not yet. As he zipped his duffel shut, he looked up at me. I meant what I said. About everything. I know. He came closer, pressed a small piece of folded paper into my hand. When the time's right, read this. Then he was gone. The house felt too big after that. Nathan still stayed in his room most days, barely engaging. I gave him space. Something I should have done earlier, but I also started leaving little notes. Not dramatic confessions. Just memories. Little things from when he was younger. A drawing he'd done in 2nd grade. A photo from his 8th birthday. A story I used to read him at night. I wanted him to remember us. That even though I'd made mistakes, I was still his dad. And that hadn't changed. A week later, I found him in the garage, sitting on the old beanbag, holding the photo album I'd left on the workbench. He didn't look up when I walked in. You really love Mom, he said softly. I did. So why? He trailed off. I didn't know I could feel this way about someone else. I said honestly, not after she passed. Not like this. But Zayden, he brought something back in me I thought was gone. Nathan nodded. I still don't get it, he admitted. But I'm trying. That's all I can ask. That night, after Nathan went to bed, I opened the note Zayden had given me. It was short, just a few lines. You once told me gardens grow where we least expect. If I was a seed, you were the sun. Thank you for helping me grow, even if we don't get to bloom together. Z. I sat with that letter for a long time, and when I finally folded it and placed it in the drawer beside my bed, I knew this wasn't over. Not for me, and if I was lucky, not for him either. I didn't expect to see him again. Not soon, anyway. After Zayden left, time blurred. Not fast, not slow, just numb. Nathan was slowly warming back up, but cautiously, like he'd built an invisible wall around his heart. And now he was watching to see if I'd earned the right to step over it. And me? I kept waking up in the middle of the night, thinking I'd heard his voice in the hallway, or smelled the faint, earthy cologne he used. But it was never him, just a memory echoing off empty rooms. One evening, nearly 3 weeks after he left, Nathan poked his head into my study. He didn't say much, just stood there a minute, then said, I talked to Zayden. I froze. Just over text, he clarified. It was weird. At first, I didn't know what to say, but he apologized. My throat tightened. Did he say how he was? Nathan nodded slowly. Yeah, he's okay. Said he's working things out with himself. That he misses both of us. That last part caught me off guard. Nathan stepped inside now, leaning against the doorframe. I'm still mad, kind of, but I've never seen him so real. You either, honestly, I don't think I ever saw you want something this much. I didn't reply. He took a breath. I don't know what I believe about love anymore, but I know faking it isn't better than feeling it. Then he turned and left, and I sat there, heart pounding, wondering if that was his way of saying, "You have my permission now. Go." I didn't contact Zayden right away. Something told me he needed his space, not just to cool off, but to become. I had watched him grow in ways neither of us had expected, and now I needed to honor that growth. But I kept his letter close, folded neatly in my wallet, a quiet reminder of what we shared and what might still be possible. Days later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a small Polaroid. Zayden, standing by a cabin near a lake, the mountains behind him, hair a bit longer, sunlight kissing the edge of his jawline, smiling, and on the back, building a life, slowly. Hope you're doing the same. No name, just that, but it was enough. Nathan's birthday came in early spring. He didn't want a party, just dinner at home. Something simple, comfortable. So I made pasta, played his favorite playlist, pulled out a dusty bottle of wine we'd saved since before his mom passed. Halfway through dinner, he said something that stopped me cold. "I invited someone," he said, pushing his plate slightly aside. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the door. And then, as if scripted by fate, it opened, and Zayden walked in. The moment was surreal. He looked different, more grounded somehow, stronger. There was a steadiness in his posture I hadn't seen before. But his eyes still held the same storm. He smiled, sheepish, unsure. "Hi," he said. I stood. I couldn't help it. "I didn't know you were coming." "I didn't either," he said, glancing at Nathan. "But someone told me it might be time." Nathan shrugged. "Don't get weird about it. I just wanted my birthday to be normal." We all laughed, a little awkwardly, but something inside me loosened, like maybe the worst had passed. The evening was miraculously perfect. No drama, no big conversations. Just us, the three of us, laughing over old memories, telling new ones, pretending like we were just a family again. And maybe in our strange way, we were. Later that night, after Nathan had gone to bed, Zayden and I sat on the porch, just like we used to. "I missed this," he said quietly. "I missed you." He looked down at his hands. "I was scared back then. Still am, sometimes, but I've been thinking a lot about what I want. And I don't think it's about labels or roles. I don't care about the world's rules. I just care about how I feel when I'm around you." My breath caught. "I know it's complicated," he said, turning to face me, "but everything that matters usually is." I smiled softly. "I'm not looking for simple. I'm looking for real." He reached for my hand. "Then let's be real. Whatever that means, wherever it goes. Let's not lose this again." And right there, in the quiet hush of night, beneath a sky full of possibility, we didn't kiss. We didn't touch more than that one held hand. But something deeper happened, something that told both of us, we are not broken. We are becoming. Together. It's one thing to find peace in private. It's another to carry it into the world. After that night on the porch, something between Zayden and me quietly resumed, not with fanfare, not with declarations, just with presence. He didn't move back in, but he started coming around more, helping Nathan with small projects, joining us for dinner once a week, taking walks with me in the evening, always brief, always casual, but never meaningless. There was this gentle, unspoken agreement. We're going to do this right. No secrets, no rushing, no shame, and maybe most importantly, no pretending we owed anyone an apology. Still, stepping out beyond our home felt vulnerable. Zayden had always moved to the world with a strange kind of duality, confident on the outside, but uncertain where he stood in it all. I understood that now better than I ever had. Loving each other was real, but it didn't mean it would be easy. One Saturday, we went to a farmer's market in town. Something simple. We weren't holding hands. We weren't making a scene. But the moment two older women glanced between us, and then whispered behind their hands, Zayden's shoulders stiffened. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Too fast. Yeah. Just forgot how many eyes exist outside our bubble. Let them look. He gave me a half smile. That's easy for you to say. Is it? I paused and added, I spent most of my life hiding parts of myself because I thought no one would understand. I'm done with that. I'd rather be seen fully and judged than half loved in the dark. He looked at me. The hurt in his eyes softened. I want that too. And just like that, quietly, bravely, he reached out and brushed his hand against mine. Not a grip, just enough. We walked the rest of the market like that. Later that night, over dinner at my place, Nathan brought up something unexpected. I've been thinking about moving out. I blinked. Oh, yeah, not because of you two. I swear. Just, I think it's time. I got an offer for a place near the city, closer to campus. It's got decent rent, and Leo's looking for a roommate. Zayden smiled. You and Leo finally deciding to make it official? Nathan rolled his eyes. Don't start. I chuckled. You sure you're ready for that step? He nodded. I think so. But I wanted you to know I'm okay now. Really, with all of this. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. No more tension, okay? He added. Life's weird enough. Zayden raised his glass. To weird. Nathan clinked his cup against ours. And to figuring it out anyway. The house got quieter again after Nathan moved. But not in a lonely way, more like peaceful. Zayden started spending more nights over. Not every night, but enough that his toothbrush lived in the bathroom and his hoodie lived on the back of the chair. We didn't talk about what we were. We just were. Some mornings we'd drink coffee in silence, reading or sitting in the garden. Some evenings we'd watch old movies, his head resting against my shoulder, breath slow and steady. Other nights, he'd lie beside me in bed, facing the ceiling and whisper, Do you think we'll always feel like this? I never had an answer, but I'd squeeze his hand and say, I think this feeling is what we hold on to, even when it gets hard. Of course, it did get hard. People started asking questions. My sister called after months of radio silence, her tone clipped and full of judgment. You're seeing him? Yes. He was Nathan's friend. And now he's more than that. Silence. He's half your age. He's not a child. And he's not a phase. I could feel her biting down on her opinions. Do you really think this ends well? She asked sharply. I closed my eyes. I don't know, I answered honestly. But it started honestly. And that's already more than I can say for most relationships. She didn't call again for a while. And that was okay. What surprised me most was how some other people reacted. Leo, Nathan's closest friend, dropped by one afternoon with a bottle of wine. I hear things are settling down, he said with a smirk. I chuckled. You could say that. He nodded, then leaned back on the porch railing. Zayden's a good guy. Weird, but good. I think he's better with you than he ever was alone. I raised an eyebrow. Doesn't that bother you? Leo shrugged. Not everything needs to make sense to be real. Love's messy. You just don't always get to choose how it shows up. Then he took a long sip and said, Besides, if I can survive watching Nathan snore through 3 seasons of TV, I can survive you two being in love. Zayden started bringing up bigger conversations as spring faded into early summer. What we wanted, what we feared, where we were heading. One night, curled up together beneath a blanket on the porch swing, he asked, Do you think we'll ever be accepted? Like fully? I think some people already do. I said, and others may never. But acceptance isn't always a goal. Peace is. He nodded slowly. I think I'm getting there. Me too. A beat passed, then he smiled faintly. I want to do something with my life. Something real. You already are. He shook his head. No, I mean, I want to create something, not just exist. I was thinking of going back to school. Maybe something in social work. Helping queer teens who don't have the support I had. I stared at him, a soft warmth growing in my chest. That's beautiful. He looked down, almost shy. You make me feel like I matter. And I want to help others feel that too. One night, As we lay in bed, quiet, the fan spinning above us, Zayden reached across my chest, his hand resting over my heart. "I used to think I was broken," he whispered. "Like no one could ever really love the parts of me that felt too complicated." I didn't move. "I used to think that too," I finally said, "until you showed up." He pressed his forehead against mine. "No matter what happens, thank you for showing me I'm allowed to be loved like this." My throat tightened. "You always were." The strange thing about healing is that it doesn't happen in a straight line. It loops, it stumbles, it reopens, and sometimes, just when you think you've made peace, the past knocks on the door. For us, that knock came in the form of a voicemail, one I almost deleted. It was Nathan's mother. Yes, her, the woman I used to love, the woman who had disappeared from our lives years ago, like a ghost with a suitcase. Her voice was brittle, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. "Hi, I don't know if this number still works. I know I don't have the right to ask anything, but I heard about Nathan, about everything, and I'd like to talk. If you'll let me." She left her number at the end. Then silence. I didn't tell Zayden right away. I didn't tell Nathan either. I just sat with it, heart in a whirl, wondering if this was some test I didn't ask for. I hadn't spoken her name aloud in years. I hadn't allowed myself to. The rage had calcified. The grief had turned into routine. But now she was back, with a voice full of regret and a question left hanging in the air. I didn't call. Not yet. Instead, I went to the only person I knew would help me think clearly. Zayden. He listened, patient as ever, as I played the voicemail again. When it ended, he didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, "What are you scared of?" I sighed. "That I'll forgive her. Or worse, that I won't." He nodded slowly. "I can't tell you what to do. But I do know one thing. You've changed. You're not the man who was left behind. You're the one who stayed and grew anyway." That hit something deep in me. "I don't know if Nathan wants her back in his life." I whispered. Zayden met my eyes. "Then ask him." So I did. I sat across from my son the next day, both of us nursing coffee. The afternoon sun turning the kitchen gold. "I heard from your mom," I said. His head jerked up. "What?" "She left a message. Said she wants to talk." He looked down. "Quiet. I'm not asking you to do anything." I added, "I just wanted you to know." A long silence. Then he said, "I used to dream about her coming back. Not because I missed her. Just so I could yell. Just so I could ask why she stopped loving us." "I don't think she stopped loving us," I said carefully. "I think she stopped loving herself." Nathan nodded slowly. "I don't need her to fix anything. But maybe it'd be good to hear her say she was wrong." I placed my hand over his. "Then maybe we both need that." I met her at a small cafe outside of town. Zayden offered to come with me, but I told him this part was something I had to do alone. She looked older, paler, smaller than I remembered. But her eyes, they still held some familiar sadness. "I thought you'd ignore the message," she said quietly. "I almost did." She nodded, her fingers trembling slightly around her cup. "I've rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times. But now that you're sitting here, I just don't know what to say." "Then start with the truth." She looked up. "I left because I didn't know who I was anymore. And instead of figuring it out with you, I ran." "You left him." She swallowed. "I know. I raised a boy who cried into his pillow for a year," I said, voice tight. "A boy who thought every woman would leave him eventually because you did. I carried all of that, and you didn't even call." Tears filled her eyes. I hated myself for it. Still do. "Why now?" "Because I heard, through someone, that Nathan's doing okay. That you're seeing someone. That you found happiness again. And I realized I never said I was sorry. For any of it." I stared at her. "I don't need your apology to survive. But maybe he does." She nodded. "I'd like to see him. If he'll let me." I didn't give Nathan an answer. I just told him the truth. How she looked, how she spoke, what she said. Then I left it in his hands. 3 days later, He called her. They met, alone. I didn't ask what was said, just hugged him when he got home and told him I was proud of him. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just whispered. It helped. And that was enough. Meanwhile, something else had begun growing between Zayden and me, something tender and terrifying, the idea of permanence. He was staying over more often than not. He'd started calling my place our place by accident, and then on purpose. One night, we stood in the kitchen, half laughing over burnt toast, when he suddenly turned serious. "I want to live with you," he said. I stared at him. "Really live with you. No more back and forth. No more uncertainty. If we're doing this, let's do it." I exhaled. "I've wanted that since the day you left." "Then let's stop pretending we need to earn it." We didn't have a big move-in day. No boxes. No grand speeches. He just came home one night and never left. And strangely, everything felt right. The toothbrush was already there. So was his jacket, his books, his socks under the bed. But now they belonged, just like he did. One evening, as we watched the rain from the front porch, Zayden whispered, "Do you still worry what people think?" I thought about it. Sometimes. But the more time passes, the more I realize people will believe what they want. We don't owe anyone a version of ourselves that makes them more comfortable. He leaned into me, resting his head on my shoulder. "I like who I am when I'm with you. And I like who you're becoming." He smiled. "We're both becoming." But the past doesn't always stay quiet. That very night, Zayden received a message from someone he hadn't heard from in over a year. His father. Just a single line. "Heard you're living with an older man now. I raised you better than that." Zayden stared at the screen for a long time, then slowly placed the phone face down. I waited. Finally, he whispered, "He never saw me." "Not really. You don't owe him anything." "I know, but part of me still wanted him to say he was proud." I wrapped my arm around him. "You may never get that from him, but that doesn't mean your life is any less worthy." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I'm done chasing approval. I just want peace now." And I whispered, "Then you're already further than most people ever get." That night, we lay in bed, his hand in mine, and I realized something. Our story wasn't just about forbidden feelings. It was about choosing truth in a world that feeds you lies. It was about rebuilding a family with new bricks. It was about becoming free. They say the moment you become your truest self isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet morning, a full breath, a room where you finally feel safe. For Zayden, that moment came one Sunday morning, just as the light started to pour through the blinds. He rolled over in bed, his arm draped across my chest. There was a silence between us that didn't need to be filled. It just was. But I felt something shift in him. A stillness. A resolution. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He nodded, eyes still closed. "Yeah, I think I am. For the first time in a long time." Later that day, while Nathan was out and the house was unusually calm, Zayden said something that took me by surprise. "I want to visit my dad." My heart sank. "Are you sure?" I asked, already knowing how much weight that held. He nodded. "I need to do this. Not for him. For me. I need to look him in the eye and tell him who I am and walk away with no guilt, no shame." I reached out and took his hand. "Whatever happens, I'll be here." He smiled gently. "I know." It had been almost 2 years since he last saw his father, the man who called his love a phase, the man who raised his voice but never his understanding. Zayden didn't want revenge. He didn't even want an apology. He just wanted to take back the pieces of himself he'd left behind. When the day came, I offered to drive him. He said no. "I need to do this on my own. But I'll come home to you." The hours passed like wet cement. Every sound in the house felt louder. Every second dragged. But then, the front door creaked open, and he was back. He didn't say anything right away. Just set down his keys and walked into the living room. Then finally he spoke. I told him I was in love with a man who saw me. Really saw me. That I wasn't sorry for it. That I didn't want his approval anymore. I waited, holding my breath, and I asked. Zayden shrugged. He didn't say much, just stared at me, and then said, "You're not the son I raised." My stomach dropped. Zayden smiled sadly. I told him, "You're right. I'm better." And I walked out. He exhaled, then let his head fall against my shoulder. It didn't fix anything, but I'm not broken anymore. In the weeks that followed, something light bloomed in him. He laughed more, cooked again, started sketching on napkins, little ideas, designs, silly things. It was like I was watching someone step into sunlight for the first time in years. Nathan noticed it too. One night, while we were watching an old movie, Nathan looked over at me and said, "He's good for you." I smiled. He's good for himself, too. Then came the unexpected turn. It was a Thursday. I was working late, and Zayden had gone out for a walk. When I came home, there was a note on the fridge. "Don't panic. I'm fine. Went to see someone I should have talked to long ago. I'll be back tonight. I promise." There was no name, no hint, but my gut told me, Nathan's mother. When Zayden returned later that night, his expression was unreadable. He took off his jacket slowly, then joined me on the couch. "I met her," he said. "I waited. She was working at a local center. Volunteer stuff. I guess she's trying to make up for lost time." Why go to her? Because I needed to see the kind of woman who gave up a son like Nathan. I needed to understand. "And you?" He nodded faintly. "She's haunted. You can see it in her eyes." But she looked me straight in the face and said, "Thank you for being the kind of man I never had the courage to become." That hit me like a storm. I reached out and pulled him close. "She sees what I see." I whispered, "You're brave." That night, I realized something else. Zayden wasn't just healing. He was guiding, not just me, but Nathan too. He had slowly become part of the house, not as a guest, but as family. And Nathan had started turning to him for things he didn't even ask me about, questions about life, identity, confidence. One night, as I passed by Nathan's room, I heard them talking. Nathan's voice was low. "You think I'll ever feel completely okay being me?" And Zayden replied, "You already are. The rest of the world just has to catch up." One weekend, Nathan invited over a new friend, someone he'd met at the university LGBTQ+ support group. His name was Eric. Bright-eyed, awkward smile, nervous laugh. But as the evening went on, I noticed something shift in Nathan's posture, a comfort I hadn't seen before. When Eric left, Nathan stayed quiet for a while. Then he came into the living room and said, "You know, if someone had told me years ago that I'd feel this safe being myself at home, I wouldn't have believed them." I smiled. "That's all you, kid." He shook his head. "No, it's you. And it's Zayden." Zayden came up behind me then, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Maybe we did okay," he whispered in my ear. I leaned back into him. Maybe we did more than okay. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Nathan walked into the kitchen, holding an envelope. "This came for you," he said, handing it to me. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, shaky, ink-blotted. It was from Zayden's dad. "I don't understand your life. I don't know if I ever will. But I do know my silence didn't make me right. I won't pretend to be proud of something I don't get. But I see you're happy. And maybe that's more important than being right." Zayden read it beside me, his hands trembling. Then he simply said, "That's the most human thing he's ever said to me." Later that evening, we stood on the porch again, watching the sunset. He turned to me. "Do you ever think we were supposed to find each other like this?" I thought about it. "No, I think we were meant to. That's different." He smiled. "You know, I don't just love you. I respect you." That hit something deep in my chest. "I love you too," I whispered. "And I'm proud of the man you are, the man you become." We didn't need marriage licenses or big declarations. We had this. A house that felt like home. A boy who felt like a son to both of us. And a life that didn't ask for permission anymore. It was a Sunday morning like any other. The kind with birdsong, coffee brewing, and no one rushing anywhere. But beneath the quiet, something had changed. I looked across the kitchen table at Zayden, who was absent-mindedly stirring his coffee, eyes distant but soft. Nathan sat beside him, scrolling through something on his phone, humming under his breath. And for a moment, I just watched. Two people who had once been strangers, now inseparable parts of this home. It hit me then. This wasn't a temporary arrangement anymore. This was a life. Later that afternoon, Zayden and I went for a walk, something we hadn't done in weeks. We wandered to the old path behind the park, beneath tall trees that filtered the sunlight in golden beams. We didn't speak much. But then, out of nowhere, Zayden said, "I've been thinking about leaving." My heart stopped. "Leaving?" He turned to me, eyes wide. "No, not leaving you. I mean, leaving the idea that I have to keep running from who I am, or hiding." I exhaled, the tension in my chest loosening. "Oh, God, you scared me." He smiled softly. "I want to start something. Something that's mine. A design studio, maybe. Or a home consultancy. I don't want to just exist in someone else's space forever. You want to build." "Yeah," he nodded. "But with you..." I stopped walking. "Then let's do it. Let's stop holding back. Let's build something together. Not just a business to life." He looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face. I've never been more sure of anything. A week later, we told Nathan. We were nervous, not because we feared judgment, but because we respected him enough to include him in the conversation. "So," I said, "Zayden and I are thinking of officially moving in together. Starting something. A business. A future." Nathan blinked, then broke into a slow, proud grin. "Took you both long enough." We laughed. "You're okay with it?" Nathan nodded. "You both done more for me than anyone else in my life. You deserve happiness. Together." He paused and added, "Besides, I've got news too." We both turned to him. I got accepted into a study abroad program. Amsterdam. LGBTQ plus history and policy. Semester long. I blinked. Zayden's jaw dropped. "That's amazing," I finally said. "But that's far." Nathan smiled bittersweet. "I know, but I think it's time. I've been held by the people I love long enough to fly a little." I walked over and hugged him tight. "I'm proud of you." Zayden added, "More than you know." The days passed quickly after that. We helped Nathan apply for his visa, packed clothes, planned logistics. And in the quiet moments between, Zayden and I began shaping our shared dream. A consulting firm, small at first, focused on inclusive spaces, adaptive design for queer folks, and safe home layouts. Zayden called it openness. "It's about safety," he explained. "About people finally feeling like they belong." On Nathan's last night before his flight, we all sat in the backyard under string lights. There were no speeches, no drama, just warmth. Nathan raised a glass of apple cider. "To found families," he said, "and to the brave people who love us before we can love ourselves." Zayden clinked his glass gently. "To making new stories." I looked at them both, my son and the man who had once been just his friend, and I realized I had never felt more full in my life. When we dropped Nathan off at the airport the next morning, there were tears, but the good kind. The kind that say, "Thank you, not goodbye." As he disappeared in the crowd at security, Zayden slipped his fingers into mine. "You okay?" I nodded, even as my throat tightened. "Yeah, because this time, no one's walking away in anger, just toward something better." Back home, the silence was strange. No movie playing. No Nathan dancing in the kitchen in socks. Just us, and for the first time, it didn't feel like anything was missing. It felt like a new beginning. We converted the guest room into our new workspace. Whiteboards, design samples, sketches pinned to the walls. Zayden came alive in a way I hadn't seen before. Confident, passionate, focused. He pitched ideas over breakfast. Took client calls from the patio. Sometimes, he'd pause mid-sentence just to look at me and smile. "I never thought life could feel this whole," he said one evening. "Me neither," I replied. Months passed. Openness gained traction. We helped redesign shelters, worked with LGBTQ plus youth centers, and even got featured in a local queer magazine. But the biggest moment came one rainy Thursday. I found Zayden staring at the mailbox, soaked, holding a small package. He handed it to me, silent. Inside, a photo frame, a picture of Zayden as a child, and a sticky note from his dad. I don't have the words, but I'm trying to become a man you'd be proud to call father. Zayden didn't cry. He just stood there, holding the photo to his chest, as the rain poured and the healing kept happening, drop by drop. One night, curled in bed, I whispered, "If you could tell the version of you from a year ago something, what would it be?" He thought for a long while, then answered, "I'd say, you are not the worst thing they said about you. You are not a burden. You are not broken. Love is coming. Just hold on." I held him tighter. "You are loved, Zayden." And so here we are. No wedding bells yet. No flashy announcements. Just two men, one strangers, who helped each other heal. A boy who became a son. A house that became a home. A life that became possible. And when people asked how it all happened, I just smile and say, it started with a visit, a quiet boy, and the one thing none of us were ready for, the truth.